folks, welcome to another digital painting live stream with Jennifer Garstang of mydragoneatmyhomework.com. We're going to be picking back up with this painting in an attempt to keep cool on this very, very, very hot Friday afternoon. I don't even know what the temperature is. I had to go to an appointment down in San Mateo, about 20 minutes south of me, and it usually doesn't get that humid over here, but today I was driving down and it was literally everything looked, well, it looked like it looked washed out. Everything had been, like, everything was slightly overexposed or had been, you know, faded in the sunlight because of the mist that was over everything, but it was still so hot. It just hit you like a ton of bricks. Anyway, but fortunately my apartment's pretty well insulated, so I'm not overly dying today, although the poor kitties had to stay inside instead of getting their usual time in the sunshine on the balcony, because I was not gonna leave the door open for them today. They're making do. They're making do in the sunshine through the window. So I think they'll survive until the weather cools down a bit, and I feel comfortable leaving the door open again for them. Just to be clear, I'm on the third story and have a enclosed, well, not super enclosed, but enclosed enough balcony, and my cats are pretty smart. They're probably not gonna jump off the edge. I would be very surprised if they did. And they just go out there and hang out in the sunshine and while I work and come and go as they please. Alright, let's pick back up with this lovely sudsy mess going on in here. Last time I had started working on this little section right here to make it look like he'd passed the sponge through it. That could definitely use some more work. You know, I'm looking over here at some of these bubbles. They definitely look a little more like scribbles than bubbles at the moment. So we're probably gonna get to that, but there's one thing actually that's been bothering me every time I come in here, so I'm gonna fix that, and that is the shape of this particular glove, this edge here. So I'm actually gonna pick that up because, you know, it's been bugging me every time I open this file, and I kind of want to deal with that before doing all the other stuff. Alright, so we got, there's that, and there's that. Okay, so for this, I'm thinking I'm going to use the liquify tool so I'm not blurring everything. As I've mentioned before, the liquify tool is great. It just takes a lot of processing power, and it's great for kind of shifting things around that you need, you know, just a little bit shifted here and there that you don't want to get blurred. Because if you use something like the smudge tool, it doesn't take quite as much processing power usually, so it goes a little faster, or quite a bit faster in general, as long as you're not trying to like do too much with it, because it gets really tired, or, you know, very slow if you are trying to, you know, take a large paintbrush and smudge a bunch of stuff and it has to process every single pixel that way. But for small changes like this, what we're looking for, there's usually there's the smudge tool and the liquify tool are kind of the two ways to move stuff around and manipulate it. I can speak today. Gosh, it's too darn hot. Too darn. I swear, I never noticed this before I started making videos, but I have a weird pseudo accent that really weirds me out when I listen to it. I don't know where it came from. I think it's just like my brain glitches out and I'll start to say something and it turns into another word, and so it sounds like me. I've said mother as m'other. I'm like, what am I even saying? Anyway, back to the task at hand. So there's these two different tools that we can use, and I've talked about these in previous live streams, so feel free to, you know, tune me out if you've heard this before. But there's the liquify tool and the smudge tool, and these are really good for just kind of doing little changes Liquify has a few extra options that Smudge Tool doesn't have, like this pucker tool. So I'm gonna zoom in little by little. So for instance, I want to make this fold a little bit less wide. So I can just run the pucker tool over it carefully, and that just kind of brings it together. It pucker. There's also the bloat tool. So it has a few extra, you know, like a swirly tool and things like that. But for just kind of moving stuff around and manipulating things, the biggest difference between the two is that the smudge tool kind of will blend things together a little bit, so you can actually accidentally make it kind of blurry if you're not careful. Whereas the Liquify tool keeps everything very much in focus, so it doesn't mess with that. Okay, let's give that a try and see how that looks now. It's just annoying. The shape, every time I looked at it, I was like, that's too round. It doesn't look right. It doesn't look right, you guys. Overall, I'm very happy with this, the texture on these gloves, though. Oh, thank you, phone, for reminding me that I have a digital painting live stream scheduled for today. I don't get overly excited, but I have been trying to get a little more of an established schedule, so you may have noticed that they're all at 2 p.m. now. We'll see how long that lasts. I haven't published the schedule yet because I don't... oh, speaking of processing power, oh my gosh, just thinking about it. Anyway, so there's a lot that's kind of up in the air right now in terms of my own schedule. I'm looking for, you know, some part-time work, and I've got a few, you know, applications out, and interviews, and you know, various things like that that I'm very excited about. We'll tell you about those if I get them. You know, just part-time stuff to help support my art habit, and feed my art habit and art addiction. And but you know, some of those jobs take place in the afternoons on, you know, so my sort of loose tentative schedule right now of Monday, Wednesday, Friday, 2 to 3 or 3:30 is kind of, it wouldn't work if I am working at that time. So there we go. So now we're just gonna need to adjust this little star over here, but I think that looks much better in terms of it matches much better. I need to fix the do some little tweaks here. One of the things I'm gonna do is, come on, computer, why don't you zoom it in for me? There we go. It just needs me to talk nicely to it. There we go. So this little corner right here should not cut off this way. It's not layered over the top. We need to indicate that it's going around behind. So I'm going to do that, and I'm going to hit the behind tool, and I'm going to just paint a little bit more around here. I'm going to take this darker color, and just kind of go over, not have that be behind now. There we go. Get the dark color. Go where it's supposed to be. A smaller size. Just kind of finish that off there. And now I'm just going to do a real quick little touch up on the edge here. Select this. And we want to make sure that I'm creating, that I wanted to select this area in here, and we're going to just real quick run the eraser tool over there. That's at 100%. Clean that up. And now here is one where I am going to use the smudge tool just a little bit. Just because it's, I'm doing just tiny little touch up, so it's not gonna make things blurry by doing it this way. There we go. That looks a bit better. And then let's get this guy over here. Make that clear where that cuts off. And touch up there. I'm not going to bother with a pen tool on that, it's so tiny. Unless it bugs me down the road, which it might. There's no guarantee that this will not bug me. Because I am nothing if not overly perfectionistic. Alright. Let's go back to the stars, and we're just gonna take the eraser tool and do a little lower opacity and a little bit bigger brush. And we're just gonna kinda get rid of that there so it looks like it's folding around. This side here. And lastly, I'm going to go back with my burn tool. Let's see. I'm just going to take the smudge tool, do a little bit more with that over here. I just don't want it to look quite so like it's been pulled. I want it to look like I want it to look like the fabric has kind of just fallen where it will, rather than looking like it's been pulled in a given direction. And then we're going to take the burn tool and just kind of go around the edges here to give it that rounded look. Rounded here. So again, the best way to create the illusion of depth is by thinking about where the shadows would hit and where the highlights would hit. You know, the dark and the light is how you create the depth in a 2D image. So we want to go in and we're, you know, kind of wanting to make sure that for it to look right, it needs to have the right amount of dark. You know, it wouldn't look right if it's too dark, because then it doesn't look like it has the same lighting source as the rest of the painting. But we do need to make sure that it's dark enough that it matches the other glove and has that 3D look. So you can see when we zoom in, it kind of does that little flicker thing. You can kind of, well, you got a glimpse. Alright. And I'm looking like right here is actually a little too dark, so we're gonna switch over to the dodge tool by holding down my hotkey. Shadows there, and then we're just gonna saturate it up a little bit. So it doesn't look like it's gone gray. There we go. Too much, too much, too much. No, too much saturation. It's just kind of feeling it out, you know, like, it's never gonna be, it doesn't have to be exactly perfect. But I'm liking it a lot better now. It matches the shape and size of the other one much better. Although I think the last thing I'm gonna do is flatten this edge a little, and for that I'm gonna use the sponge, or the smudge tool at 100%. And I'm just gonna make it nice and big. Oh, not like that. Just kind of push that like that a little bit. And I'm gonna use the pen tool. Lower that last little bit there. Selecting, and get my eraser tool. That's why there's like a magic random hover star. There we go. Okay, so... and one more thing I'm going to do is take the blur tool and just soften this edge a tad. There. Because these edges wouldn't be... You know, in real life we don't have hard edges. So having it too crisp is actually a problem. Makes it look odd. It makes it look too clean, you know? It's great for graphic design to have it really crisp, you know, but it's not so great for when we're trying to create like the look of oil painting. Or heck, even photograph. Straight lines. Clean edges. Antithesis of hand-done art. Unless I guess you use a ruler or something, that's fine. Okay, so coming back down to these bubbles again. Let's see what we got going on over here. The suds themselves right here. Okay, so I think I'm wanting a little more definition here, a little more separation. Along the edge here. So we're going to get rid of that. We're just going to have a very small line. I don't want to get rid of too much. Maybe around here only at this edge. Because having that kind of smeared look helps kind of give the bubbles that appearance of being, well, smeared. Now I'm going to take just a little bit more with the smudge tool and make these guys a little less texture, but not like, oh hey, look, there's every individual bubble. There we go. I really like how this little texture looks there. That's really quite good. That's what I'm going for. Apparently I'm Scottish. I don't know. I'm very tired. It's very hot out. Don't mind me. My brain is only on about 50% capacity at the moment. Maybe a little. Maybe more, maybe a little less. I don't know. Bubbles that may have formed around the edge. this and not looking quite right is this right here. We need to make this gap wide enough that it looks like the sponge is the width of the sponge. Otherwise, it just looks odd. Not looking right to me. Yeah, I like that concept. We're gonna do back up a little bit. We're gonna make it a little bit lower percentage when we do that. So what's happening here is we have a very wet sponge. You know, he's dipped it in the water and he's squishing it against the edge of this thing. So it's gonna have water droplets forming here, and it's also going to be rubbing soap, and there's gonna be like thicker drops of water. So the soap is lighter, so it's gonna be wanting to cling more, but the thicker congealing droplets of water are gonna flow straight down and make streaks in the soap as they go down to the water line faster, so they drip down. So they're gonna have like that sort of straight line pattern. And like, I kind of know. Oh, I hate messing with my. Well, this is the soap pattern that I really like, so it's fine. So you know, I kind of know that it does this because of just years of staring at stuff like this, like noticing little, you know, how you have to kind of be aware of how the physics of things might work. You know, not to compare myself to Renaissance painters or anything, but they had to look. There was a reason that, you know, Leonardo da Vinci dug up corpses and cut them open. And, well, I mean, actually, the reason he cut them open was for science. But the reason he was able to paint human bodies so well was because he had that understanding of anatomy, of what was going on behind what he was seeing on the surface level. And so that's kind of, you know, what I try to do here is, like, think about, okay, what is going on behind? What are the physics, you know, physical properties of the different materials? How long ago was this, how long ago did this did the event occur? Like, how long ago did the sponge hit the edge of the cauldron? How fast would the water flow? And again, it's not like super precise or anything, but just kind of thinking about how that would look and getting that right. It's very helpful to kind of builds a context for the image. It places it in time. It gives it a moment before and a moment after, and that's the kind of, it's details like that that are, I think, very worthwhile to put into pieces. I can give another example of a I'll show one of my paintings. Like, I do this in a lot of my pieces, and you can see it in others. Let me save, and while this is saving, I'll show it to you. So, the infinite save. So if we go to my website, let me bring up the gallery. Go straight to gallery. So a lot of these have little details like that where I'm kind of looking for things. So, here we've got, you know, how far has it soaked? How dry is the blood along the edge here? You know, obviously he slashed it with one side of the sword, and then he's kind of tipped it up, and you know, it's run down a little bit. His cloak is not on fire, so it was a while ago, and it's kind of had time to cool off. Just a lot of those little things. So then that was one of my earlier pieces. You know, the same thing with my Dragon Age, my homework. There's a lot of little details. They don't really, not all of them show up, but you can see there's like the little bit of the flame that it's still hot from the fire that he's just burned. He's got his toes, you know, have come up digging in there, and so you have that detail of kind of the implied destruction that's about to happen. The pencil has a little bit of curve, and in the higher resolution versions you can kind of see there's a little crack starting to form. So, you know, things like that that imply that there is a moment that happened before, and there's a moment that will happen after, and it will continue after that. And not all the pieces have that. Like, you know, a lot of these guys really don't. They're more about, you know, this one's like sort of, this one kind of does because, but it's sort of a cheat because, you know, Game of Thrones, we know what part of the story this is. These three are more kind of metaphorical images. And then this one is a conceptual image of, you know, the geisha costume and things like that. So doesn't need as much. But this one here is much more of a story piece. And one of my favorite little details about this is, first of all, the explosions. I'm very happy with how those turned out. But my absolute favorite little detail that if you look closely you'll see is the flags go in different directions. So if you look, you see, and you kind of see how the smoke is curling in a way that it looks like, so the idea is, you know, the wings are the source of the wind. And so where are the wings in relation to the castle? Well, they're directly overhead. So the flags are going to be going in all different directions, and I kind of made it look like the wind is coming, you know, not only is the lighting coming from this angle, but the wind is kind of coming from that middle and forcing them outward. And you got them bending a little bit. So kind of that placement of this, everything is connected and interacting, and it exists as a snapshot of a moment in time. And that's kind of one of those little key things about story paintings, I guess I'll call them. Paintings that are, or narrative paintings, I guess. Things that tell a story. Rather than, you know, being a metaphorical composition like a lot of my others. Let's get a few to look like it's kind of dripping down here. Make this a little bit stronger. Oops. Well, my mouse battery is low, but that's okay. I'll recharge it later. I don't have an easy access to a plug right now. Sides should be going with it too. Just kind of tuck in there. I think a good way to get an idea, if you want to visualize, maybe part of the reason that I'm confident in my visualization of how the water would work is from how dirty my car gets and how I've washed it by hand. I think that's actually where I first kind of noticed how the water drips down. because it makes the streaks in the dirt, and that's kind of what I'm imitating here is, yeah, because my car gets very dirty. It gets very dirty before I get around to washing it. I feel bad because I really like my little car. I'm very happy with it. It's a great little car. I've liked all my cars. But yeah, so you kind of see if you just run a sponge over a dirty car, like take a wet sponge and just across, you'll see the water like drips down, straight down, and it makes those streaks in the dirt. So that's kind of what I'm going for here. And notice none of them are coming from higher up. They're all from the base of the sponge because that's where the water would be congealing from. So, where are my suds? There's my suds. I think I want one over here too. Just a nice thin. And it shouldn't be entirely straight down because I'm looking like it's actually coming down at a slight angle because it's running over the edge of the cauldron, and so that's going to be there we go. And I think there'd be a lot more here because it would be the most wet when it was coming out. So there's going to be the most streaks right around here. Kind of different thicknesses and stuff. Let's get the airbrush effect just to make it a little less. I'll rebuild those bubbles shortly. They shouldn't get thinner as they go down. That's not how the physics of this would work. They should stay the same width because it's the droplet congeals and then slides down, and it doesn't get much smaller in the time that it takes to get to the bottom there. There we go. I'm liking that. Just tone this down a bit right here. Go back to this guy here. Tone that down a bit. Back up, back up, back up, back up, back up, back up. We're fine. Good enough. Up these bubbles because they would still be there even if the water drops. Take my brush tool now, and we're gonna go here. We're gonna space this out, make it a little bigger, and higher opacity. Just gonna kind of go in and add some of these little highlights to the bubbles and shape dynamics. Slightly larger. eraser brush and just do a little bit of a there. I'm just gonna come in and get some of that. Oh, whoops. Alright, apparently it is time. I'm a doofus and was working in the wrong layer. We're just gonna go ahead and merge these two and add this to the suds, and we're going to merge the suds. There we go. And now I'm all working in the same layer. Oh boy. That feeling one. That is one of the minor inconveniences about digital painting, is that if you're working with multiple layers, it's very easy to accidentally start working in the wrong layer and do a bunch of work and then realize you've done a bunch of work in the wrong layer and messed up other stuff that you didn't mean to mess up. And well, undo is great, but it only can take you so far. Sometimes if you've gone too many steps, you cannot fully undo, and you just kind of have to do your best to recreate what you did and what you liked. Alright. Just coming in here with the eraser brush to kind of define individual bubbles a little bit more. And get rid of a few more of these bubbles here. Too many bubbles. Too many bubbles. Gotta get rid of some of those bubbles. I know, right? That sounds crazy. You can never have too many bubbles. Blasphemy. But we have too many bubbles. It is a sad reality. Don't know why I'm whispering. Alright. So So now we have this nice little row of bubbles that would have formed, you know, because let's face it, dishwater is never without a little bit of suds, even if you've disrupted it. So we're gonna have those bubbles that maybe congealed around a little bit and came together and made a bunch more bubbles, or merged it down into smaller bubbles. We're just gonna kind of go back in and get this nice little whimsical sort of sparkly light. Get them looking like bubbles. Part of the reason that this looks okay, you know, I'm thinking, is you still, even though you can't quite delineate, there's a lot of little bubbles on top of each other, so while these ones in the front need to have kind of their specific lighting, we can have some random little highlights around in here that it's like, that's being picked up by the way the, you know, the overlapping bubbles are catching the light. We do want the bubbles to be disrupted, I think, where the droplets have gone. At least the recent ones. Alright. Light touch. I'm going to kind of go over with a very low sensitivity or very low pressure smudge tool. We're just going to kind of give some roundness to these bubbles now. Just a little bit, blend everything together. Alright. Suds end and other suds begin. I'm liking that. I think that's good. Alrighty. So there's really not too terribly much more to do on the suds at this point. So kind of go through and make sure there's no straight lines, because that here and there, that's fine. You know, it's not a photograph. It's a picture. It's a drawing. It's a painting. So having some lines here and there are fine, but we want them to look organic. So, you know, there's sort of a look to the lines that you draw on a computer, and they're not all, sorry, adjusting the microphone a little bit, they're not all, like, if you look over here, right, this looks very computer-y done. Like, this does not look like even a pencil sketch. And that's just because, you know, when you're sketching in a computer, and you're coming up against the limitations of processing power, how do I describe this? So, you can set custom brushes to behave almost precisely like a certain medium. You can have stuff that behaves like a pencil. You can have things like that. But when I'm trying to just paint quickly, because when you're doing that, the more little attributes that you add to your brush, the more it's gonna need to process it. And usually, I mean, my computer is quite fast, so it doesn't really make much of a difference. But when you're sketching, there's you can introduce a little bit of latency between what you're doing on your tablet and what's appearing on the screen. And even just a tiny bit of latency, to a certain extent, really can kind of mess with me. It's kind of like when you're trying to write and you're just trying to get it all down as fast as you can, and you're coming up against the limitations of that. You want your tool to work as fast as your brain, basically. Which in my case is not always very fast, but maybe it'll work a little faster than my brain, in fact. So I don't, when I'm just trying to kind of sketch things out and get the feel down, I will often just specifically just stick to the standard brushes and try to not have those nice additions, because I want to just get it down quickly. But that means that I need to go back over and kind of carefully examine my pieces before I send them out into the world, you know, to market, and make sure that I haven't missed, you know, at least not too many lines that kind of break the illusion that this could be a painting, not you know, an actual real-world media kind of painting rather than a digital painting. Not that there is anything wrong with digital painting as a media. I really like the look of oils, and so when I want it to look like an oil painting, I don't want it to look like a digital painting. Someday I'm actually gonna, you know, learn how to paint with oil paints. Someday. When I have a house and, like, a nice sized studio space and lots of spare money, because oils are expensive. High quality oil paints are. So, you know, everything about, that's one of the really nice aspects. I don't know if I've talked about this before. One of the reasons that I really keep coming back to digital painting is not just because I like it, you know, because I do like it, but there's a really practical reason, which is it is so much less messy and, in fact, less expensive than most, if not all, traditional media. Because you figure you need your tablet, you need your computer, you need your program, which does add up. You know, when you're buying, if you're getting the Adobe Suite, I was lucky and had a friend I could go in on it with, but you know, we're talking hundreds and hundreds of dollars for the pro. Like, it's probably about a couple $1,000 initial investment to make sure you have all the pieces that you need. And that's including the computer, that's including all the hardware and the software. But once you have that, you know, you're good to go for quite a while before, you know, you don't need to have new materials that you purchase for every painting. You know, you're good to go for 5 to 10 years potentially without ever needing to buy any new materials. Whereas, you know, compare that to an oil painting, that you've got, oh, you need a whole swath of colors. You need your palette to mix the colors, palette knives. You need, you know, all different kinds of palette knives. You need the canvas. Oh, canvases can be quite pricey, although Michaels does have some really good sales on canvases, not gonna lie. They had, oh my gosh, side note, they had miniature canvases, like little couple inch by couple inch, and they had a sale on them for like $1 each, and I was so tempted to buy them because, oh, I am an absolute sucker for miniatures. I really get a kick out of really anything that is an inappropriate size. I really like those chairs that are just like way too big, and like wine bottles that are just like as big as a person kind of thing. Those giant wine bottles that you'll sometimes see at restaurants. I really like those, and I love miniatures. So it was really hard not to get that. I had to remind myself, when am I going to use this? I have plenty of art supplies to do plenty of projects. You know, I have a backlog of projects. The bottleneck is my time. There will be other sales, you know. But someday. But yeah, the other thing about having a lot of materials, so there's the expense, and then there's also like just the mess and how much you spread out. I spread out. I just do. I am a messy individual. I'm getting better as I get older. But it's a matter of I'm learning to manage it and kind of figure out ways of countering my own ridiculous, messy tendencies. But yeah, like, I'm working on some clay projects right now, some polymer clay, and just, very small projects. And I don't know how I managed to like spread out over the entire desk when I do them. So I'm really lucky that we have a projects room, at least, that gives me another desk that can be messy for a while. And then there's like I have one of the clay projects involves like doing a design and cutting out the design and then cutting it out of clay. And so I get all these little scraps of paper everywhere, and I try to put them directly in the trash can, but I don't always succeed. Well, not the trash can because they're paper, recyclables. Just all the little scraps and things. It gets so messy so fast. So this is nice because even though it gets messy too in my digital files, like I have an ongoing project of organizing all my darn digital files and making sure that I can, I'm backing up regularly, so if a catastrophe happens, I can find the exact most recent file. But man, version control for me is a nightmare. Trying to make sure that I've got that I'm operating in the same file if I save and move to a different file. I'm just trying, coming up with naming conventions, trying to just figure out where everything should go. But it's self-contained on the computer. It's not like bleeding over into my day-to-day life. Well, my non-digital day-to-day life. Alright, so these are starting to kind of take shape. I'm not terribly thrilled with them yet. These smaller bubbles here. But they're definitely looking better. So, I'm going over with the eraser to kind of break them up a little more. I'm going and doing like dots with the eraser. I'm taking the mixer brush tool, and now I think I'm going to actually go over with the smudge tool a little bit, just to, that's too much. Again, just to kind of make these lines look a little less pixely and a little more natural. Let me zoom out a bit and see how that's looking. It's not bad. I think they're actually we don't have enough little ones. It's not too bad. We're zooming out. eraser back over here. I'm gonna space it out more. We're just gonna make this a little harder. Just gonna go around here with the eraser tool and break this up a little more. Back to the mixer brush. I'm gonna get my shape dynamics going on. I kind of come back in here, get some movements. Littler bubbles around. Form some bigger ones over here with a lot of little ones in between. This nice big guy over here. Break it up a little more. I think these are going to be smaller too. And this is just kind of that, there's like a fine single layer of bubbles as opposed to these, which are multiple bubbles all on top of each other. You've got kind of this single layer here where you can see the liquid through the bubbles, so it makes them a lot more transparent. farther back. I was almost thinking I'd redo that a bit, but no, I think I'm gonna keep going from where it's at. This one, we're gonna just do a little brush action over here. Take that eraser. Okay, why are you... Don't understand why it sometimes does this weird thing with the shape jitter. Shape dynamics. That's better. That's what I'm looking for it to do. Although, I almost like the different shapes now that I'm looking at it. live stream where I'm zoning out just painting bubbles. Alright. I think I want a few bigger ones in there too. Get a little more detail on these bubbles. So that glassy texture here, a little more there. And then we're going to do the same thing we did before where we space it out a lot, get a nice high opacity. Just kind of go in and out a little. Make sure I get specific ones on the larger bubbles so it's very clear where they are. This guy here, I need to go back in and get a base to it. So it looks like it's just kind of floating in midair right now. Up here. right. I think we're getting pretty close on these. I'm liking how they're looking. Although I'm definitely gonna wanna brighten them up a bit. Not too much again, because we're gonna be colorizing these at the end. Alright. Well, I think that's where I'm going to leave this for now. We had a nice short and sweet session of an hour and 15 minutes. That's good enough for the moment. I may work on these bubbles on my own later, and we'll come back when I'm doing something that's a bit more interesting to watch. But, you know, we've got sort of the water on the sponge. We've got sort of this nice look here of the extra bubbles over here. You can see when I zoom out, the texture on these is much more accurate now to what dish soap would be, although we have some of these larger ones forming in here to indicate that there's some sort of the chemical reaction going on that's gonna lead to these bubbles, and of course these guys, the most important of which is this big old boy right here, for this little boy right here to be chasing. So there's where we're at. That's where we'll leave it for now, and I will see you guys next week. Thank you for joining me. Again, you can follow me on Instagram, Pinterest, and obviously YouTube. Feel free to subscribe for regular updates whenever I'm going online. And also on Facebook, all of which, if you just go to whatever it is and then My Dragonate My Homework, all one word, you will find me, or visit my website, www.mydragonatemyhomework.com. And if you are on the main page and scroll down, you'll find all of the links to my social media platforms. Thanks so much, guys, and I'll see you next time.